Well, we do apologize for that, but you are watching Channel 1 News Hour. It's time for Echo Watch, our focus of discussion this evening, stemming from events that took place here in Nairobi last week. 4,700 delegates gathered for the 4th United Nations Environmental Assembly. 25 resolutions were made, all this intended to save the planet. And for more details of what really transpired, I am now joined by Dr. Juliette Biao, who is the UNEP Regional Director for Africa. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
But before we begin with our discussion, let's just have a quick preview of what transpired at that particular conference in a report by Jacqueline Wambiru.
The curtains fell on the 4th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly at Gigiri in Nairobi, with member states approving resolutions of the 6th Global Environment Outlook Report on single use of plastic, marine litter and microplastics. The Committee of the Whole approved, among others, waste management and innovative solutions for sustainable production consumption. Also endorsed was convening of the 5th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. United Nations Environment's Acting Executive Director Joyce Msuya lauding the member states for their dedication towards shifting global economic systems towards more sustainable trajectories that tackle environmental challenges.
These resolutions have demonstrated global political will to tackle these challenges. Some might argue the resolutions don't go far enough, that they are not strong enough. We are on road to a sustainable future. These resolutions keep us in the right lane and on the right track.
President of the 4th session of the UN Environment Assembly and Minister of Environment of Estonia appealing to nations to set up a legal binding framework.
I feel that we should also strengthen the legal basis of these agreements. Everyone should have the right to demand that there are common principles for environmental governance all over the world.
However, no agreement was reached on the draft resolution on deforestation and agricultural commodity supply chains. Member states pledged to return to this issue in other forums and future United Nations environmental assemblies. At the same time, no consultations were held on the resolution on geoengineering, leading to its withdrawal. The world came together for an environmental action that has seen United Nations member states deliver a bold blueprint for change. But how can African nations implement these resolutions? For Echo Watch, I'm Jackie Wambiru.
Of course, Jacqueline Wambiru just highlighting some of the resolutions that came out of that particular conference, the contentious issues and the things that are of concern to particularly Africa when we talk about saving the environment. Let's now get into our discussion. And I want us to just begin. 4,700 delegates, 5 presidents attending the 4th United Nations Environmental Assembly. As they gathered in Nairobi, what is the state of the environment?
Thank you very much. I think I should talk about the general state of environments and what really triggered the global conscience on the environment during the UNEA 4. I think generally the picture is not that good. If we want to really focus on the climate change, the emission gap report really produced by United Nations Environment Program and the report of IPCC have really a common conclusion on that. We are really not moving toward the trajectory of the ambitions that the whole world agreed upon during Paris Agreement. We may recall that the target was really to bring the temperature between 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius, but the current trajectory is toward 3 to 4 degrees Celsius. And we can see that all over the world, you know, there is an intensification of the risk of natural catastrophes. We can see even in Kenya here,
we experienced the drought,
the adverse effect of climate change. And the issue of finance, climate finance, is really crucial today.
Are governments putting, their money where their mouth is when it comes to financing environmental campaigns.
No, the government are not putting money there, and we are all talking about the engagement of the private sector, because we will need more than how many $3 trillion to really address the climate change in the world. So the awareness, there are many resolutions that have been taken even before UNEA 4. We need really, the UNEA 4 is saying there are policies in place,
yes,
there are regulations in place, but we seem to do things business as usual. Now we need really to innovate. We need innovative solutions for accelerating the implementation of Agenda 2030 and the Africa Agenda 2063. This is what really UNEA 4 is about.
It's about the innovation bit of it. But even as you focus on innovation, in terms of those who are the implementers, the policies are there, then there's the people. To what extent are you engaging them at that level, at the grassroots level?
Yes, at the kind of the world highest level decision body as UNEA, the world think really globally. Things are going on regionally, but now we need really to act locally. And this is what countries are doing through the National Development Action Plan and the National Adaptation Plan. But again, even in the implementation of these plans at national level, again, we need to do things differently. We need innovative approach. We need policy innovation. We need financial innovation. We need technological innovations, which are not really there today.
So what proposals were there in terms of innovation? Do you have accurate data to which you can use to implement, some of the proposals that you were putting forward?
Yeah, as I mentioned, there are still some policies that are in countries that do not really take into account the need really to innovate. And you cannot talk about innovation without technology. You cannot talk about innovation without science. And this is what really UNEA 4 is really stressing on, that we need environmental data. We need really technology, a promotion of technology. And as far as Africa is concerned, infrastructure is critical for Africa's development. But again, in terms of innovation, this infrastructure that have to be put in place should really reflect the innovative solution. The infrastructure should be climate resilient, for them to really accelerate the development of the continent. So I have even to say that Africa was the continent which initiated the strategic topic on innovation. Indeed, and that happened through the processes of the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment. And indeed, in 2017, during its 16th session in Libreville, Gabon, many African ministers adopted Decision 1, which is investing in innovative solutions for accelerating the 2063 Africa Agenda. And this logic was carried forward at a global level during UNEA 3, where Africa sponsored this resolution, which is well reflected in the theme of UNEA 4, which is innovation for environmental challenges, sustainable consumption and production.
Okay. As you know, you went into UNEA 4. What had you achieved from the UNEA 3? Because the question is always, after the conferences, what next? Do you achieve the resolutions that you did, or again you come back just to to do a progress report?
Look, yes, implementation is something that is critical. You know, unless you implement, without implementation, all those adopted resolutions cannot be reality. But we can also talk about an implementation in a linear way, meaning that if there was 40 resolution adopted at UNEA 3, how many? But some of the resolutions are being implemented through, for example, regional or global flagship program that are not really are not being seen in a linear way. Some of the resolution, because of the need for innovative solution, are coming again in UNEA 3, but really enhancing other aspects that were not really taken into account in UNEA 3. But I have really to say that especially Africa Group really worried about the fact that the resolution are not really implementing in a balanced way, in a way that Africa Group really see that the interest of the continent is well taken care of. Yeah.
All right, let's move closer, home to what we keep talking about, the question about plastics. Of course, it featured prominently in this particular assembly. I mean, have we seen a change in how we are operating when it comes to plastics? Of course, Kenya has banned the use of plastic bags, but we still have the problem of, the bottles that are used for soft drinks. To what extent can we be able to contain how we dispose and use the plastics?
I think that if there is one thing that came out very strongly during UNEA 4 is really to reduce the use of the plastic products. It came out very strongly. It's really to encourage countries to continue what they have started. I have to say that even in across Africa, things are being done in terms of the ban of plastic. But we are not talking only about the ban. After banning the plastic, we have to take a step forward in terms of really how do we recycle those plastic that have been collected, and how do we create jobs.
And what are the alternatives?
And what are the alternatives?
Yeah.
I have to say that almost 20 African countries have banned plastic and are at different stage of the implementation. One thing is to ban. One thing is really to issue a gazette, but another thing is how you implement it, and another step is how you then move in what we call circularity. So this is what now countries can really learn from each other and really scale up. During UNEA 4, I think you heard about the flippy floppy, which is one of the innovation from Kenya at a local level, where plastic waste were collected really to build a dhow. And it was really presented in UNEA 4. So there are some key initiatives here and there, but we just need to really share best practices, apply approaches and practices, and also scale up. So this is where we are with the plastic today. But it came out very strongly at UNEA.
So what is the status, of our oceans, our rivers, and our lakes? Because the marine life is the one that is mostly affected with, how we dispose of our plastics.
Generally, and I will speak to Africa, one of the key challenges cut across Africa is a sustainable waste management. We still lack infrastructures and key services that are needed to really dispose very well our garbage, and the way also that we collect them and we manage them is not sustainable. When we talk about our oceans, pollution, we only look at the oceans, and what really happens is inland. and it's end up in the oceans.
Yes.
So the education issues is also the awareness. I'm not sure that in the local communities they really know the impact of what is happening in the inland and where all this end up in the ocean. So there is a real need for education and awareness.
All right, I'm told we're running out of time, but in terms of, looking at the resolutions that were made, what were some of the contentious issues that were not, resolved at this particular conference that perhaps you will be pushing for as we go forward?
I have to say, if I compare UNEA 4 with the previous UNEA, there were no contentious issues, in fact, at UNEA 4. If I have to speak to Africa region, out of the 6 resolutions sponsored by Africa, 5 have been adopted. So the only resolution that was dropped was on blue economy. And that was dropped because Africa group really want to keep this spirit of consensus. One thing that we saw really, we've seen very strongly at UNEA 4 is this unity among African member states in negotiating for the interests of the continent. Although each country has their own priorities, when it comes to the negotiation, they come together and speak with one voice. And this particular resolution that was dropped was in the spirit of the consensus among the group. And I wouldn't say that it has been totally dropped because they will, Africa group will prepare themselves more to really submit it at UNEA 5. So it's been really a successful UNEA for Africa group because the engagement and the contribution was at the higher level.
All right, I'm informed our time is up, but I'll just give you, a minute to look into the camera and perhaps, tell the continent and the globe why we really need to save our planet. We need to conserve our environment.
Environment is...
Your camera is right over there.
Environment is everything for all of us. Environment even include the human being. There's nothing we can do without environment. But we still continue to behave like as if we have a plan B, a planet B. We don't have a planet B. The planet is one for all of us. I think we need to walk the talk now. There are policies, of course, they need improvement, they need more innovation, but time for actions is now. And the world, I think, during UNEA 4, really understood that time is for action now. And if you look at the youth movement on climate, you will understand that it is a wake-up call for politicians and the stakeholders. More than a wake-up call, I think is even a warning.
It's a warning based on what we are seeing, the current drought, the cyclone and everything. All right, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but we appreciate you finding time to come and just shed light on what are some of the things that we are doing, particularly for the African continent, to try and save our planet. We really do appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Well, that is Dr. Juliette Biao, the UNEP Regional Director for Africa, just putting into perspective some of the resolutions that came out of the 4th UNEA conference that was held here in Nairobi, which was attended by 4,700 delegates, 5 presidents were also in attendance, and 25 resolutions were made, 6 of them by the African continent. Well, this is where we put a cap on EcoWatch, but of course, Alan Naoko is up next with the business news, so stay tuned.